I mean, I guess I'm a little concerned, like everybody's saying, war, war, we're going to war. And, we know the astrology was right about war, but what does that do for us psychically, emotionally, and spiritually? So I'm interested in that going forward this year and even into
Mhm.
next year as this maybe deepens. The thing about this Aries ingress is that Jupiter and Saturn, they're both in cardinal signs. The last time they were both in cardinal signs during the Aries ingress was in 2020. I just think we got to be prepared. I guess this sense of walking into the unknown and the new requires courage, I think, is certainly an Aries theme.
Whenever we have Saturn and Neptune cycles, there is an ideology crisis, but also there is this identity crisis. I've seen many people right now defining their identity based on their ideology. Is this gonna get more prominent in the upcoming years?
This is going to define the year, I think, and it's fitting that you have Aries being the sign that is the big sign or one of the major signs of the year, Saturn and Neptune there. And anytime these planets hit cardinal signs, they create new things. I think there's kind of like a divine wink sometimes when you say the
Mm.
astrology is showing changes, the world is crazy and changes, and then seeing it in the astrology is like, hey, it's okay. This is just part of the symbolic matrix, triggering what needs to be triggered. This is the best 3 months of the year, in my view. Cardinal axis, Jupiter and Cancer, the cardinal initiation of the Cancerian version, and then Saturn and Aries with everything in Aries. You see how it really is a chance for these 3 months, I think, for a lot of people to just step into their new worlds actively and excitedly.
We're talking about, Aries, the ego, but also we have Jupiter entering Leo. So I wanted to ask you more about our egos here, because then later in the year we also have a total eclipse, total solar eclipse in Leo.
Is 1967 June. The last time you had Saturn and Aries and Jupiter and Leo and that fire trine. So far with the North Node in Aquarius transit has been what's called the McQuarter cycle. And this is a financial astrological cycle. It tends to be economic turmoil.
Do you feel this moment could be asking us to confront something we've been avoiding collectively? And what would that be? What do you think it is?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
Welcome back to another Backstage Astrology episode. My name is Mayra Medina, and I am thrilled to be here with SJ Anderson, astrologer. SJ, are you a Hellenistic astrologer, a mundane astrologer? You do a lot of things. Please introduce yourself, tell people about your amazing work so they can know what you're doing.
yes, thank you. Great to be with you, Myra. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, I mean, Hellenistic astrologer, I like that label. I think that there's a whole conversation to be had about like these labels in contemporary practice and what that functionally means. We can come back to that if you want, but I certainly am grounded in some of the basic structure of Hellenistic astrology and how Hellenistic astrology sees the chart or creates a chart or structures a chart. I do like to think about my practice as being also maybe new age. I kind of like that label. A lot of people are not liking that, but I try to incorporate a lot of contemporary and modern spiritual concepts and just how I view the world, and that's very important to how I delineate charts and how I think about astrology and life. And so, spiritual Hellenistic or something, contemporary spiritual Hellenistic, mundane. Yeah, it's been an interest of mine, as a news junkie growing up, always just obsessed with the news and the world. And, it's hard not to want to be a mundane astrologer once you start seeing some of the cycles and how accurate they've been to describe the reality. So yeah, I like those two labels, you know.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, the reason why I wanted you to invite you here is because, well, we have the new astrological year is here. You've done some amazing contributions to mundane astrology by yourself and also with others. And so I want you, I just wanted you to share with us what's your perspective. I think we are done with the first 3 months of 2026. What's your impression? I just want to know, what do you think about everything that has happened?
Well, we've kicked off these new worlds. I think it's undeniable that we've stepped through the looking glass or we've stepped through the threshold now and we're on the other side of what is our new reality. And, whether you time that to last summer when we had a preview of a lot of planetary shifts, they were that had happened last summer. So let me just get specific. You know, we've got these outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, the outer planet Pluto, the dwarf planet Pluto. Those are all changing signs in a compressed period in our reality here in the middle of the 2020s. And last summer, they had all entered their new signs together for a brief period, and then they came back. Neptune went back to Pisces, Uranus back to Taurus. But as we sit here in February 2026, Neptune and then Saturn was also in Aries last year, but it has re-entered Aries.
Yeah.
And that all happened in February. So, you know, and then of course the outer world was all of this new stuff that's happened. But we've now kind of crossed the threshold is how I'm thinking about 2026. And we're into this kind of new container, this new set of facts, this new context from which our world will proceed. And of course, the astrology confirms that as these planets have all gotten new signs. Now, this will continue to grow until July and then some next year where these planets are all making these configurations in an applying way. That's a general answer there. We can come back in and get granular about any of this stuff, but that's my sense is that we've kind of crossed into the new world and here we are, you know.
Yeah,
For all,
yeah.
you know, for the good, for the bad, for all of it. It's terrifying. It's exciting. I mean, it's everything, you know. It's the new.
Yeah, so I mean, if we could summarize these like first 3 months in one sentence, how would you summarize, what has happened from January to pretty much April right now?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the one word is war. I mean, that's the one word that I think most encapsulates what has happened. You know, and I say that from the mundane perspective as one of the most important, I think, events of this year will be the war that has kicked off. And, you know, there's other wars, right, that we've brought into 2026 in Russia and Ukraine. So, you know, this is going to define the year, I think, and it's fitting that you have Aries being the sign that is the big sign or one of the major signs of the year, Saturn and Neptune there, and they met on February 20th. And so that's my one word. I would say that the second word could be maybe AI, if you want to say that's one word. I think AI is it really
Mm,
accelerating and we're rushing headlong into this new AI reality as well. But I say that sadly. I mean, I'm not happy about these wars at all. But you know,
right.
they're here, and it's just undeniable. And I mean, that's you know, I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could say something like you know, human connection and celebration and all of this stuff. But
Well, I think that will eventually come, but I mean, do you think all these wars we're having and all these conflicts are part of that? I don't want to say new reality, but maybe in order to actually get there, do you think this needs to happen? Do you think it's in the sky? Can you tell us, what do you think about that?
yeah, I do. I mean, I think we get to a philosophic question here about what is reality? And you really need to think about that, in my view, because astrology is interacting with reality. I don't think it causes, it's just part of the totality, and it can confirm, it can symbolically express, but it's not causing, it's just another layer of how we can kind of reflect on the reality using the astrology. But when you know look at the astrology, setting aside any of the facts on the ground, yeah, you know there's a lot of ways into to saying this astrology would indicate new realities and new worlds, just a few here. As these outer planets enter new signs, all of the new signs they're entering are so-called masculine signs. In the ancient way we look at the signs, you divide half become masculine or outer world, half become feminine or maybe more internalized energies. So that alone tells us we're in a major new focus that the outer reality is where all the action is happening
Mm,
in
mm,
2026. And, you know, so there's that. There is the fact that Saturn is in Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, a cardinal sign.
mhm.
And this is initiating change. Anytime these planets hit cardinal signs, they create new things, you know, so there's that happening. I guess what I would just say is, you know, is the astrology representing it? Yes. Is it symbolically interacting with it? Yes, 100%. And I think the great potential of astrology is it's a processing tool. So we can hopefully look at the astrology to help us grapple with these realities so that it's easier to live with them, you know, and I think there's kind of like a divine wink sometimes when you say the
Mm.
astrology is showing changes, the world is crazy and changes, and then seeing it in the astrology is like, hey, it's okay. This is just part of the symbolic matrix, triggering what needs to be triggered. So in that sense, I think it's inevitable. A certain amount of it's inevitable. Now, each of these cycles have wars part as part of them and great changes. And I'll set that aside here. We can go into some of that if you want, but that's what I would say to that question is that it's kind of a complex question about what is reality. And yes, I think astrology can
Yeah.
kind of express its inevitability or something like this. Mhm.
I also wanted to ask you, because, other astrologers have said previously that, sometimes war is a projection of the unconscious collective. And when I think of that, I'm just like, man, we're really messed up, like, I mean, when did we get here? What do you think about that, actually?
Yeah. Well, I think, and I go back to like religious systems or beliefs about the world that religions can give us. And there's a couple that I would say, Buddhism has a concept of the first noble truth, meaning that suffering is part of the reality. It's part of the
Mm.
realm. This realm is suffering. And I do think so there's that. Christian traditions have the concept of original sin or sin. This is a sin realm. And, that can be complex for some people who grew up as a Christian and they maybe don't like that idea. But I think it does fit with the notion that there's something about this reality that is of the nature of like a separation from the divine or some people talk about amnesia. When you're born,
Mm.
we have
Mm.
no knowledge of where we came from, where we might have been before this incarnation. So I do think that something fundamental in this place that we've incarnated is like this idea of separation or pain or suffering, and that then does get externalized. And so, one thing I'm thinking about for myself this year is like, I want to just heal spiritually on deeper levels. I want to treat my own, pain. One of my mantras lately has been no stress, no
Mm.
anger. I'm just trying to like, because it's so easy to feel that and I don't want to be in those states. And I'm just trying to like calm
Oh.
myself. It's like the non-negotiable is like my emotional and mental states need to be calm and no anger. And then we can proceed from there. But yes, I do think that humans have a root suffering, and then we externalize in these collective events. I mean, the famous example is Jung writing about what was it? I forgot the name of the German dark god that he was writing about before World War II, and he was saying this is about to show itself and destroy Europe. And I think he's on to something there for sure.
Oh, wow, I didn't know about that. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now talking about reality and realities, because I guess everyone has or is trying to build their own realities. And then we look at the collective and we see this like sad, very, very sad scenarios. I maybe, now that we are in Aries season and with this transpersonal planets doing their stuff, maybe we need to start creating our own reality from within at home, and maybe hopefully things will change. But actually, where
Yes.
are you personally in your life right now as an astrologer?
Mhm. Well, I am fully in. I mean, I've been a astrologer, kind of die in the wool, we say in Texas. But I've been just completely given over to astrology as an identity and a way of life for a number of years, and lucky that that's still true for me today in 2026. And I work with it all the time. It's my, main vehicle of expression. It is, my whole life gets filtered through it. So, I feel as happy about that as I did, 10 years ago when I became, more of a serious student. This was 10 years ago when I became a bug bit me, and overnight I market as becoming an astrologer, but I took me like a year of serious study to really grow, and I'm still growing with it. But 10 years in, I'm happy, and I feel good about it. And I don't, I mean, I guess if I'd had to say, where do I feel, what are some problems with astrology, or where am I concerned with astrology? I don't know. Obviously social media, and I know you're not necessarily asking that, but I think that would be part of like, where am I as an
No, yeah,
astrologer?
please, please,
Yeah,
please let us know because it's part of
yeah.
the like final questions. But you want to
Mhm.
answer that now? Where do you see astrology today and in the future with
Yeah.
everything that's going on? Please just continue.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we have to be careful and mature and ethical and wise, I guess is the term I would say. And I want to be as wise and as useful as I can with my astrology in terms of everything, how I just engage it, how I communicate it, both to my clients, to the wider world. I want to kind of treat it seriously and give it the kind of serious gravity that it deserves and honor it with that. And I think that in the social media landscape that we're in today, there is an instantaneousness that can sometimes be what we're expected to do with our discourse. And I don't
Hmm.
know. I mean, I do my best to kind of keep it honest and sincere and real as much as I can. I just wonder, I guess, I'm not really afraid for astrology. I think the real stuff is going to emerge, and go back to what I said earlier, like astrology is just one component of something else. And that something else you might say is truth, God, divinity, wisdom.
Mm.
So as long as we keep that centered, and then we can bring astrology as one tool to support that, I think astrology is going to be fine. And I don't really even mind the, Instagram instantaneous stuff or the sign-based signology or astrological memes or something. I think that's all fun and can be useful, and a lot of people resonate with that. But
Hmm.
um, I don't know. I just think, yeah, social media is huge for where we're at, even in
Hmm.
2026. I know social media has been around for like a decade, but there's so much more short form video and there's so many voices right now. And I think that's healthy, but I wonder how much it just becomes like too much, or we get overwhelmed, or we get kind of burnt out with a continual stream of astrological discourse, and how do you do well with that? How can you kind of still hold the deeper truth or the jewel of it, and still make sure that's being represented and honored and shown, against the backdrop of the sea of the craziness. And I would even say just one more thing, even with this year of 2026 and the war predictions. I mean, these are not predictions that have been recent. I mean, people have been talking about
Hmm.
war this decade for a long time because the cycles are so evocative. And so, but that can be there's some ways to do that well too. I mean, I guess I'm a little concerned, like everybody's saying, war, war, we're going to war. And, I think we might want to say things like, okay, yeah, it's in the cycles, but let's maybe figure out how we can avoid that or mitigate it. Or, I hope some of that can be added in with what we're experiencing this decade, some positivity, some ways to kind of actualize peace to the extent we might have power to do that. These types of things might help us. We know the astrology was right about war, but what does that do for us psychically, emotionally, and spiritually? So I'm interested in that going forward this year and even into
Hmm.
next year as this maybe deepens, how to be wise with this that we're living through. So anyhow, a little bit of a long answer there. Thanks for letting me speak there, but those are some thoughts.
No, it's important. It's important to know because yeah, social media can be overwhelming. It's great that there are like every time we have more and more astrologers, but I think, in this AI age and social media, sometimes I think that the only thing we have left is trust. As astrologers, also you want people to trust you, and that takes time and authenticity as well. In the end, I believe with the amount of astrologers and information that's out there, people are going to stay because they vibe with you or because they trust you, because they follow you for a few months or years and your data or your perspective resonates with them. I don't think there is like better astrologers than others, but it's all about how people resonate with you. But moving on to the upcoming months, we
Mhm.
are now having a party in Aries. We have like 6 or 7 planets in Aries. This, from what I understood, is something that rarely happens. What's your perspective, and what's your advice to navigate this Aries, Martian energy?
Mhm. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really awesome, I think, at one level. And I think let's just set aside for a second the global events because we could talk about just shortly there. I mean, we're deepening into this Aries moment and having Mars enter Aries on the 9th of April, having a new moon there on the 17th of April, having Mercury enter on the 15th of April. it really is almost a culmination in a way of the Aries activations that we've been living through this year, which started with Neptune entering Aries on the 26th of January and then Saturn joining on the 14th of February. So
Mhm.
just keep that in mind with these global events. We may get some peaks here with the war locally, and
Mhm.
maybe there'll be like some resolution. A lot of times with these wars, if you read history, there's like a push of a major offensive, and then it's not like going to be a constant, escalation. There will be
Mhm.
maybe stops and starts and things. And so
Mhm.
some of the commentary I've seen is that like maybe April will be a time when maybe they announce, I don't know, a new phase, or they maybe try to take the pedal off the metal with what the operation. So, but let's set all that aside for a second, because I mean that's so obvious. Aries ruled by Mars, planet of war, and there you go, Saturn, the planet of the foundations of our world, being filtering through war. So it's almost like, I was just going to release a video here soon. It's like I say in that, like I could talk every video, we could make it about war and AI, and that's all we could talk about because that is so much of the reality of these new worlds that Aries has triggered. But a nice segue from there, I would say, is that Aries, first sign of the zodiac, and it's the birth, the beginning, and it's the steps. It's actually being born, right? It's actually birthing and then, being in the new place. I've been analogizing it to the Truman Show movie. Aries is
Mm.
everything after the movie. So the movie ends, he bows,
Oh,
and then he
wow.
leaves, and then the movie's over. But the Aries is what happens when he left the fake world of Pisces and entered
Oh,
into reality,
wow.
you know?
Oh my
And
God.
so for all of us, I just want to encourage us to step into what's new for you this year, is my short way to say that. And I think it builds. I think April with that new moon will be a beautiful time to feel into your new worlds, like them, hate them. I'm sure there's pluses and minuses for everyone, but there's probably some real new stuff that's here for you this year. And I take the bull by the horn, I know that might be more of a Taurus thing, but just go with this energy, and it really is a time. I'll say this here too, with Mercury direct on the 20th of March, the same day the sun enters Aries, and
Mm.
Mercury will then station retrograde on the 29th of June. So we actually have this spring it's Mercury is direct the whole spring, and you will have some real beautiful astrology. You have Venus in Taurus, you have Venus in
Mhm.
Cancer with Jupiter. This is the best 3 months of the year, in my view, in one way to look at it, for like forward movement and embracing the new. And then to have the cardinal axis, Jupiter in Cancer, the cardinal initiation of the Cancerian version, and then
Mhm.
Saturn in Aries with everything in Aries. You see how it really is a chance for these 3 months, I think, for a lot of people to just step into their new worlds actively and excitedly.
Awesome. So that's very good news. Finally some good news. We have amazing 3 months ahead, guys. Let's take advantage. But also, SJ. So, Aries can be very courageous, but it also can be very, very impulsive. What do you think the collective is being asked to learn about courage right now?
Yeah. Well, I think I want to come back to 2020 if I can for a second, because
Please do.
one thing about this year, you may be aware that the medieval and even some Hellenistic astrologers were looking at the moment the sun enters the cardinal axis. So these would be the equinoxes and solstices. Technically, astronomically, this is what we mark as the beginning of a season, because the sunlight changes. It goes from being
Mhm.
where we are now in the northern hemisphere, less daylight than nighttime. At the spring equinox, it's exactly equal, but from the spring equinox to the summer solstice, we get more sun until we peak at the summer solstice, where it's the maximum amount of light in the northern hemisphere.
Mm.
But these charts where the sun enters the cardinal axis, which are these points,
Mhm.
can be ones we look at to say, well, what will the whole year be now? Particularly the Aries ingress, which astrologers celebrate as the astrological new year. And historically, a lot of cultures have marked that as the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And the thing about this Aries ingress is that, and this is more of an ancient astrological technique, and I look at Jupiter and Saturn as we call them the great planets, because they're the two
Mhm.
final planets and the most powerful planets in the ancient world. But in this Aries ingress, they're both in cardinal signs, Cancer and Aries. The last time they were both in cardinal signs during the Aries ingress was in 2020, when they were both
Ah.
in Capricorn together. And why that's important is that I want us to go back to 2020. And you're
Mhm.
seeing more discourse about this in the non-astrological world right now because there is shutdowns, quote unquote, in Southeast Asia. I don't know if you've seen that because of fuel. They're being told to work from home in, I believe, Thailand and Vietnam because of the fuel
Oh.
issue. There's, flights from Etihad, is that how they say it? The airline. I guess they're stopping a lot of their flights. So a lot of people are saying, are we going to have like a COVID 2.0 with like a shutdown type scenario given the situation? And it's not, I say that only because if everybody just go back to 2020 for you, I mean, think about all the newness that you had to maneuver with in your world. You had to, probably whether it's work from home or you couldn't, like a lot of people couldn't move to their boyfriend or girlfriend or their family, and, couldn't go outside or all of
Yeah.
these new realities we have to live with and maneuver with. And I just think we got to be prepared here in 20. And by the way, Capricorn is ruled by Mars, so is Aries. So it's Mars is the planet of breaking and initiating, and not always easy, right? But you can kind of you fight for what you want and you build new things using the power of Mars and the passion of Mars. And
Mhm.
so I just think that there could be some echoes for 2020. I think the rest of the year, I think people might need to be prepared to adapt, to change plans midstream, to navigate a world that is probably going to be quite chaotic and things we may have never seen, new things we may have never seen, like oil shortages or like any a number of other things that could come online. So that's I don't know if I exactly hit the question, but it's that the cardinal axis is here and it's baked into this chart, and just get ready for your world to be just new, new things. And that takes
Wow.
courage, right? That takes courage. It can be
Yeah.
fearful to have to step into a situation where it's unresolved, unknown, you don't know what's going to happen. You're just doing the best you can day to day, week to week, month to month, and you really can't predict much because the world won't allow you. Because I remember during COVID, now this was 2021 and 2022, but at the height of those lockdowns, I was like, I mean, well, I may never be able to travel anywhere ever again. So, and I was just, you kind of have to resign yourself to that because it wasn't even up to me. It was about the policymakers, and so I guess this sense of walking into the unknown and the new requires courage, I think is certainly an Aries theme this year.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe we're invited to express that, that courage differently in a way that we're not used to, because we have this definition of courage, but suddenly the world is changing, everything is changing, and what you're saying is true. Maybe we will need to find new ways of even being courageous. So thanks for that. And SJ, in April, we also, when you mentioned the new moon in Aries, it's forming a like kind of a tense configuration with Pluto and Chiron. That can feel like a powerful emotional trigger point. What do you sense this lunation might activate collectively?
Well, grief, sadness. I think we're in it now, frankly. I think it's going to build some of the things we're in now. Sadness that the world has gotten chaotic, sadness for the headlines we're seeing,
Hmm.
with the wars, sadness and grief that, what we thought the world could be, we're actually having to cross into a threshold where it's going to be something else. And by the way, this is part of Saturn and Neptune and their conjunction. I mean, they often bring new worlds. They set up whole new realities geopolitically and technologically. That's just what they do every cycle. And the Chiron side of it may be some of that sadness or loss, but you know, um, you hear this a lot when one thing goes, and so a new thing can replace it. And I think that could be some of both the planet of grief, Saturn in Aries with the new moon, Chiron, the wounded healer, and maybe having to get in touch with the wounded part of what's being born, right? Birth is painful. I don't know if you've had birth or, but you've been around it, but it's, talk to any
Hmm.
mother and the going through giving birth, and this is very difficult, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's what we're in. And, the Chiron component close to that new moon certainly to me evokes that strongly. But at the same time, I don't know, you got to give yourself time to heal. Some of Saturn and Aries is that we might not have time. It's very fast moving as the
Right.
changes happen. And I think we may need to just be prepared here to move fast and maneuver with speed. Grieve when we can, go in a little bit when we can, but remember, these are all outer world signs. And even
Hmm.
Cancer, which is not, it's a water sign, is a cardinal sign. Of the water signs, it's the most maybe active in a certain way. And yeah, so that's some of what I would say. I want people to hopefully can grieve when they get a chance to, the day of that new moon, as the moon is blocked and blocked from this sunlight. Sometimes that
Hmm.
can be a good period, the dark moons they call them, where it, magically, or these new moon rituals that a lot of people will do, you can rest during a new moon, and maybe that'll be just on that day, like try to take some time away, feeling into your sense of woundedness or sadness or grief that you're going through,
Grief.
you know.
Yeah, just to remind the people, this is happening April 17, new moon at 27 Aries, that SJ is talking about. Um, but also, with Chiron in the mix, because we know Chiron is between Saturn and Uranus, right? So it's like the old and the new, and also the wounds. Do you feel this moment could be asking us to confront something we've been avoiding collectively? And what would that be? What do you think it is?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. I come to, and I don't want to bring up topics that are too controversial, but in
Mhm.
America, we've had these Epstein files that were released, and that is a big part. Some of my friends are saying they think that's all about Saturn, Neptune, and what it's been. My
Oh,
view is that
wow.
the Epstein stuff has been around for a long time, depending on how deep you've been in that part of the internet. But that's just an example. Short, and we don't have to really go into that at all. But I mean, it's an example of kind of seeing maybe the power structure, or seeing kind of the darker nooks and crannies of our reality, and how that might be part of our world. So that could be an example of having to confront a collective
Mm.
energy that's been hidden, that's now kind of maybe revealed at some level. I think war itself brings all of this out, because and we'll see how these wars go. But I mean, I'm coming back here because when you say collective, I mean, this is
Hmm.
immediately what's happening in the collective. So we got to
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about this stuff. But
No, yeah,
uh,
definitely. Please do.
yeah, just war. What happens during a war? People get drafted, maybe people die, like from the country that troops die, or innocent citizens die. So that's all can really expose whatever tensions are in the body politic, because people aren't happy about that, right? And then there may be political passion. There could be wars over the policy making decisions in America. Just to layer in one of these outer planet cycles, as Uranus comes into Gemini, this has often been about American war, or fighting in America. And I think we're set to see maybe some of that split in the body politic, potentially around the war, or around whether it's the Epstein files or whatever it's going to be. But I do think there's some kind of collective boiling over that could maybe erupt here. And maybe that new moon will be a trigger moment. I don't know. I mean, anytime you
Wow.
have Aries, it is a very
Yeah.
active, some people say violent, or, I mean, you read any textbook and about Mars, and that's what it is: riots, anger, violence, breakage, So, anyhow, I just say, coming back to what we talked about earlier, of like owning the shadow, trying not to externalize in harmful ways. I think that would be useful to keep in mind. But as we know, the collective energy, it's often not able to do that. And,
Right.
so protests, anger expressions in the streets, sadness about people dying, resistance to the war. I don't know. Things like this seem to be in the cards here when you start talking about collective revelation or something like this.
Yeah, but this is the thing that, there are so many things, so many terrible things happening, and probably some other really good things happening that we don't see on social media. But, it saddens me a little bit that with all this like wars and Epstein files and political extremism or divisions and stuff, it saddens me when I see people buying into it, like putting more fire into the I don't know how you say that in English, but
Mm.
and instead, I mean, I think we're also being invited to, I think that is the test, right? Like to, I mean, the world is burning. What are you gonna do? You're gonna put more, how you say, fire, or you're just gonna try to, remain grounded. What do you think about it? What's the advice you can give us in order to navigate this Aries, fire now for the next months?
Yeah. Well, I think that it raises questions like what is a wise way to engage your world? And I think a lot of us have different callings around that. I mean, I know for me
Mm,
personally, I'm not much of a activist. I'm not a
mm,
political organizer, and I'm not someone who would want to, who's going to be doing that, But at the same time, there may be people out there like that's their profession. And I would kind of defer to activists that really know how to, excuse me, navigate energies like that in ways that are healthy or constructive. Because on the one hand, if and for me personally, I don't really participate in a lot of that at one level. So
mhm.
I'm not really gonna tell people, "Oh, go get into the streets and protest," because I don't really plan on doing it. But some other people I know, friends, they really feel engaged politically. They're
Mm,
actively engaged in that
true.
area of our world, and they want to maybe, try to change the world in the ways that they feel like they can through whether it's traditional politics or more activist style politics. I guess what I'm saying is I think each of us will have our own task here. The
Mhm,
archetype of Aries is one that is about fighting, but fighting well and choosing to fight well. I think you could also abstract it to another higher level, which is simply action. I
mhm,
mean, Aries is wise action. The sun is the wisdom. It's the
mhm,
exaltation lord of Aries. Mars is action, and it is the domicile lord of Aries, we say in the ancient tradition. So it's trying to bring awareness and wisdom to the actions we're taking.
mhm,
And I just would encourage people to get active, stay active, whatever that means for you. And this is where your individual chart can help because you have Aries in a certain area of the chart. So, like, let's say you're a Aquarius rising, you may be dealing with siblings and community relationships and,
mm,
in-laws. And, it might be very clear from your chart what your task is with the action of this Aries moment that we're about to go through. And it may have nothing to do with the collective events in the world. It may be in your chart brought through other themes. Now, people may have it in their 10th house and their 11th house and their 12th house, and maybe they're part of, I don't know, they're already a political activist and they're going to do some like, organize a march for peace or something. And that could be, wouldn't
mhm,
surprise me at all if there's things like that happening. And not only April, but extending into the rest of this year. Jupiter enters Leo in July. It's gonna, or in late June, it'll make a fire trine with Saturn and Aries. So the thing about Saturn, and this is why it's so important, it stays for up to 3 years, sometimes more in a sign. This Aries theme is prominent. It's here. It's not going away.
mhm.
And I imagine that, anyhow, what I'm saying here, how we work with this, it's not just the answers to those questions will be relevant all through 2027 and into 2028 as well. I think it's good to keep that in mind.
Wow. Wow, interesting. I love that. And I'm so happy you're here because I've been, having this question in my mind and I don't know, I was wondering like who can I ask this question to? And I think you're the perfect person. Whenever we have Saturn and Neptune cycles, there is like an ideology crisis, right? We see that. But also there is this identity crisis. And with Neptune, I was wondering because Neptune is about dissolving and this kind of thing. I've seen many people right now, defining their identity based on their ideology.
Mhm.
What do you think of that? I mean, is that it? Like, is this gonna get more prominent in the upcoming years? What's your take on that?
Yeah, my take is probably, and sadly, I mean, I would support people, and I'm more of a Buddhist. I mean, I've studied with Buddhist teachers and I'm a yoga teacher. I've gone in the Hindu Advaita Vedanta route. So my personal spiritual views
Hmm.
would definitely advocate in deconstructing our identities that we hold dear. I mean, I think there is no self. There's a famous interview where David Lynch asks the actor, and I can't think of his name. It'll come to me. He's like, "What do you want to be remembered at?" He says, "Nothing. There's no self." And this is a famous American character actor
Oh.
who who's just in a bunch of art films. He was in that movie Paris, Texas from Wim Wenders. He's the main actor in that. His name will come to me in a second. He was in The Godfather 2. But he's like, there is no self. I don't want to be remembered for anything. I don't exist. And I think that to me is one maybe higher
Mm.
archetypal expression of Neptune and Aries, because Aries is the identities that we're fighting for. And Aries is that impassioned fervor of I am this, and I'm going to go act on behalf of what I think I am. And it's very charged energy, and we love it for that. But at the same time, the downsides or the risks would certainly be, as you say, fighting it to hold on to with our egos, or not even really knowing who we are. We feel so strongly that we haven't really processed who we are. We think we're something, we just lash out or we just act upon it. So my hope is with a Neptune there, it can dissolve some of the identities. Now that's a higher octave
Mm.
expression. And I think the risk, as you wisely said, is that we fight for, there's more of an attachment to the identity. Neptune, there's delusion around identity. There is
Yeah.
it's even more of a fervor that we get lost in or taken with in a negative way. And some of this is like the wars, like, the classic anti-war or the war dissident or something like this. I think
Hmm.
about like the poet E. Cummings, who was arrested during World War I in America for not wanting to fight. But there becomes these collective obsessions with war, and if you say I don't want to participate, there can be risks with that. But just to come back, I wanted to say yes, I encourage everybody, question your identities. You're not who you think you are, very likely, and that's a constant questioning. Whatever you've been told you are, you're probably not that. These are my personal beliefs, and deconstruct it, because it's dangerous if you get lost in an identity and you then start building protection around it. So
Wow. Okay. So also we're talking about, Aries, the ego, but also we have Jupiter entering Leo. So I wanted to ask you more about our egos here, because then later in the year we also have a total eclipse, total solar eclipse in Leo. And Leo is such a creative, expressive sign. Do you feel these energies or the eclipse could ignite something new in how people show up in the collective or
mhm.
creatively, publicly?
Yes, absolutely. I feel that way. And the best example I've been giving for this particular transit is 1967 June, the last time you had Saturn in Aries and Jupiter in Leo, and that fire trine. It perfected in, I believe, June or July 1967. I think it
Oh,
was
wow.
July, but it was applying in June. And there was a famous concert called I think One World Event or something like this, and
Mm.
it
Mhm.
was an event that was the first global simulcast concert, and artists from all over the world participated. The Beatles are famously the UK's
Mhm.
participant, and they sing the song "All You Need Is Love." And you can get the video. It's a really cool video. It's like they're in studio singing the song, recording it, and there's like the audience is with them partying, as they sing it. But that to me just typifies what's possible with this fire trine. I mean, you mentioned Leo being an expressive sign. Leo and Aries are very similar. The sun is the planet over both. Plays a very important role. And
Mhm.
I think we'll be able to express our humanity. Beautiful and essential expressions of the human power and potential are possible. And what could that mean functionally? Well, probably some cool art on social media. I imagine people doing cool stuff, sharing cool videos, music, cinema. I think the arts could be great. I think in the face of challenges, the response to that, maybe people will celebrate the good parts of humanity as much as we see the bad parts of humanity this year, and sometimes you need the bad to show the good. I think all you need is love. That context in 1967 was, of course, anti-war movements as well,
Mhm.
protests against the Vietnam War, which was a big part of that cycle. And, we have those echoes. We have these wars in our cycle. And so I imagine people might say, hey, we want some peace and we want to express that and kind of celebrate humanity and these kind of non-warlike parts of humanity. So I'm looking for that this year. I'm what art and peace and art together.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I was thinking because in 1967 also there was a war here in this part of the world. I can't remember which one, but certainly there was one. So hopefully we'll see more of like the musical, the concerts, the coming together with, or through music or, that kind of creative expression. I think it's a great opportunity. So, SJ, we also have this new series of eclipses in Leo and Aquarius. But now things have shifted, right? Massively. So, what do you foresee with these eclipses and what are the lessons you consider that are the most important collectively, or if you want, go personal as well, whatever you want to share?
Yeah, the main thing I've been looking at so far with the North Node in Aquarius transit has been what's called the McQuarter cycle. And this is a financial astrological cycle. It tends to be economic turmoil. And you can pull up when is the North Node in Aquarius. So the last time was during the crash in 2008. And now we've got 18 years and we've got it coming back. So
Oh.
I think that's part of this moment. I just think that we may have some economic shock that we'll have to all grow through and navigate and change around and with. And I think there is some of that can be useful in some sense. I mean, in 2008, it cleared out structures of the economic system that weren't serving and weren't useful. And so you kind of clear out bad debts or bad deals or, fraud. I think in that case, you kind of clear some of that out and you can get restarts or refreshes around the economic system. And certainly that happened in 2008 when, there was things like quantitative easing that the central bank in America deployed to fix the economy, 2009. So there was new structures that emerged to then keep the collective system going. And there's always then opportunities, as the system stabilizes, there's new investments or new areas to participate in or, what have you. So that's part of it. I think that, and that's just using the timing piece of the cycle to map similar events happening repeatedly during that. I think I want to do more work on this. This is on my list to, research even more about this cycle. I haven't done my deep dive yet on this. The nodes will change signs in July. So that's probably part of why. And I've just been so busy with other stuff. But I would just say, coming back to Leo
Hmm.
and the
And
fate,
July.
and yeah, in July it enters, and then the eclipse on the 12th of August with Jupiter.
Mhm.
I do think we need to ask ourselves what is the good stuff that human beings have and can give, and what makes us human. And I think this can be related to AI because
Um,
AI is going to have us questioning, coming back to the idea earlier of questioning our identity. One
mhm.
thing I wanted to say there is that AI, when you have an AI, like I use it a lot, and I can just tell it, okay, go research. I have it now connected to the ephemeris. So
Oh,
it has
wow.
all the files, and I just say, hey, I want to know. I could ask it, hey, give me when was the North Node in Aquarius? Go give me the last 5 cycles, get the exact dates, and I want you to go. I have, prompts that I have, like go
Mhm.
research, and I have the list, technological, cultural, and it will go spend 20, 30 minutes and come back and give me really accurate and detailed reports about
Oh.
reality. So, I mean, on the one hand, I don't really feel threatened because it would just take me a lot of time to do that, Um, but at the same time, it's changing, I think, how we work, and maybe it's giving us powers to go farther, create more, extend more with our
Mhm.
uniquely human powers, which is like the leaps of creativity and the connections that I can make that it can't make. So I think I've been excited about this part of AI. A lot of people are afraid of it, and I'm not saying it's all good or anything. There's dystopian, problematic sides of it, certainly, but we may be able to step into our human potential having a tool that's so powerful that can extend the reach. And you go back to the 1960s, color television, that technology of that
Ah,
simulcast
sí.
color TV, like that, it's a new way to project the human potential and power with the technology. So I think a lot of that's going to happen with the Leo eclipse.
Wow. I remember it stayed with me since the very first day I watched a video you made like years ago with Dan Waite,
Mhm.
World Astrology Report, and you're talking about July 2026 and this basket, like
Yep.
Barbos basket. And
Yes.
now that you're saying, the part where you guys are saying it's an opportunity to fill in the basket with new stuff. And I absolutely adore that thing because, we're always focusing on the negative and the retrogrades and whatnot. But I think July, because I've been hearing some really scary predictions about what's coming in July, and I try to stay with that image of that basket you guys share with us like 4 years ago, or like it's been a while now.
Yes.
So, what did you envision? How would you like the world to look, with that new basket, let's call it.
Yes, yes. I envision technology. I come back to that because that is so potent in terms of what it can give us as humans. And let's just go back in history, like running water, electricity. That's a new invention. That happened actually with a Neptune-Saturn conjunction in 1882. The first electric grid was installed in New York City in
Mm.
1882. You have so I mean, think about our lives today. I mean, without electricity, without hot water, without refrigeration, I mean, it would be a lot different. It would be a lot less comfortable for a lot of us, I think. And, people being risen out of poverty, even just clean water, modern science, modern medicine. So my sense is that technology is going to play a really big role. And, I wonder, like, I think about what could that be? And I come back to AI, and I'm not really an AI evangelist, but it's because it's emerged here, right? As Saturn and Neptune have conjoined, and they were co-present in the same sign in Aries last summer. And that's when
Hmm.
a lot more of what we call age AI agents, this thing called Claude Code, which is the most used coding tool and coding assistant. The people that develop Claude Code, or Claude, they call it, the company's called Anthropic, and they, it's like the head is like 20% chance it is already sentient, that the AI somehow has a sentient nature. And so I just think
Wow.
about what could it mean if we have a really advanced intelligence that is available and working with us? Like, what are the positive things that would happen in our world? Well, resources could be fairly distributed. We could have medical breakthroughs, and that's, I
Hmm.
think, already happening. We could have all kinds of new levels of sustaining our humanity and in ways that we don't even, have yet. So go read what they're saying. The futurists are saying about AI. That's my
Mm.
main advice when I think about the basket formation. And I was just on a podcast with a woman named Susan, I think Hopkinson. I've got her last name. It's a long one, and I can't remember it exactly, but she's got a YouTube channel here. And she and we were looking at Ceres, which is a planet I like, and I had my chart up and we were talking. And Ceres in 2027, and I believe it's July, will actually have a second basket. Jupiter's gone, but
Oh.
Ceres comes back, and all of the outer planets are applying again. They're back with another application phase with
Oh,
Ceres, and they're
wow.
all in 6 degrees. And check, it's either June or July. So or it's mid-year at some point, but that's a second basket. So I think this could be 2026 and then into 2027. And, maybe the wars will wake us up to like what's worth living for. Or, oftentimes wars in the aftermath, you have new worlds of stability. And, I think about World War II, where you get new institutions like the IMF and the
Hmm.
World Bank and NATO and not that I'm like for or against any of that, but it's objectively establishing stability in the world. And then you have this run from like, Uranus and Gemini in the 1940s to now Uranus and Gemini here, where there's a kind of stable, consistent world order. Now I know there's been little wars and things, and I'm not trying to mitigate any of that, but seems like a really big one we're in now of reworking the world. But there will be stability. Uranus leaves Gemini 2033 finally. Saturn will be in Cancer with Uranus in Cancer during that time. So, I think that there's a lot just to come back. Yes, technology, I think it's going to be awesome. I think we're going to have more abundance as a result of it. That's my hope.
Wow, amazing. I didn't know about this basket, It's amazing also if it's Sarah's series, Sarah is involved. Thinking about new ways of nurturing ourselves and our society and, all of that series symbolism. I will
Yes,
look
yes.
into it, and thanks for bringing that up. So, changing gears a little bit more about your personal opinion or experience as an astrologer.
Yes, yes.
Has there ever been like a really, I don't want to say a bad transit, but like bad news that you saw in a chart and then you're like, okay, I need to communicate this in a way that is not scary? Is this something you deal with like frequently or not?
Yeah, I mean, it comes up every day with the clients that I see all the time. I mean, there's often, I guess, there's a few answers to it. So, yeah, it's a task that's part of the work of a consulting astrologer is that we have to learn how to communicate the symbols in the chart in ways that can be uplifting and useful for the clients that come to us. And one of the guys I learned from, oh, his name is escaping me. It'll come back to me. He's a big Vedic astrologer in America and American guy who he's involved in the American schools of Vedic astrology. They're one of the organizations that puts on UAC every several years, the big conference
Oh.
that's happening in September. Dennis Harness. Dennis Harness
Mm.
is his name. And I met him at the last UAC and we got to talking and he said the three Ds, this is the thing he was taught in consultations. Never bring up divorce, disease, or death. You just don't talk about it because it's just not really ethical or it's not useful with a client.
Wow.
Now, I've learned when I can do that and when it's appropriate and, how to do that in a wise way with clients. But, often, where is Saturn in the chart? That can be challenged. Saturn is a planet of obstacle and challenge and block and grief and sadness and restriction. And so everybody's got a Saturn transit right now in one area of our charts. And it's like, how do you talk about that? If you coming back to this idea of a third house Saturn, Aquarius rising. I don't know why I'm
Hmm.
picking on Aquarius rising. I was just actually I don't even know. I haven't even been around much Aquarius rising recently, but what if the brother or the sibling and the sister and there's like a drama trigger and there's a fight in the family and maybe it's major. Maybe like the brother or sister borrowed money from the parents, and there's now a fight over the inheritance, and it's a major rift that is not easily solved, and it's a large chunk of money or something like
Mm.
that's heavy and that's hard.
Mm.
I think what I would say with folks is, well, what can Saturn give us that, but for it being there, we wouldn't get? And these are things like deeper foundational restructuring, and in that
Mm.
example, it may be like, okay, well, now you know that one of the brothers or the siblings is just a bad actor, and there's a need for recourse, maybe legal recourse, but you kind of remove a bad actor and then you restructure the family dynamic in ways that are way healthier before
Mm.
Saturn came to that area. Now, of
Right.
course, you don't want to have a problem like that, but what if removing that bad actor, being aware of it, one, is better than not being aware of it.
Mm.
And then two, we kind of rebuild our world with Saturn to protect us and give us a more stable foundation going forward. And so there's ways to describe it that, and that's an extreme example of something that's quite bad, but it's not always that bad. But I always say with Saturn, like, and this is another thing to answer the question. We can phrase, there's a, English language, which that's what I speak and that's what I consult with. It's a lot of words in the English language, a lot of
Mm.
words. So, and you can always say something differently and accentuate a different connotation. So with Saturn, my favorite, this is what I tell people with Saturn, take it seriously. Okay.
Mm.
Wherever it is, take those topics seriously. So in this case, take the sibling relationship seriously because that can include, you know, whether it's good or bad, like taking it seriously is going to be really good. Think about laying a foundation that can take
Mm.
maybe some time. So have endurance to take time with a process and then take it seriously. And then, yeah, be prepared to kind of toughen up and maybe work through problems over time or something like this. And then I would remind them, hey, you're building a new foundation. So and there's this astrological tradition around this, which they say the gifts that Saturn gives can't be taken. So, and that's very true. I've seen. I mean, Saturn can be amazing with what it can give us.
Mm.
And So, you just, those are some, as an example of how I might talk about a Saturn transit in a way that can prepare someone, not fear monger too much. One other quick, this is one of my favorite topics. One of the things is that you gotta, in my view, explore with someone their life, the facts of their life. So you don't want to be prescriptive, in my view. And even in my own life, and that's like I see a Saturn transit, I don't want to say, oh, it's going to be this horrible thing. No, you got to let reality show itself so that
Mm.
you can use the Saturn transit to help process or interact with the life facts. But you don't want to pre-trigger some kind of negative thing. You want to let it show itself. So you got to give it space to breathe.
That's a great advice for Aries season. Thank you for that. I'm thinking about, Saturn in Aries and how we want everything fast. We want to know the outcome fast, what's next fast. And Saturn is like, hey guys, no, not with me. So also taking a moment to, allow what wants to be revealed in our lives instead of trying to control it or something like that. I don't know.
Yes,
But
yes, yes, yes,
but
yes.
thanks for that. And also, Ezra, I wanted to ask you also, what is something about being an astrologer that people don't usually see or understand?
Hmm. Interesting question. I mean, I think about when I hear that question, my mind immediately goes to what do people see? So I kind of want to know what do they see? I'm trying to put myself in a position of maybe a non-astrologer who just kind of sees an astrologer and what they might see or perceive. You know what? I guess part of it, what's coming to me right now is like
Hmm.
I don't think people understand how heavy and serious it is. Like we're not just having fun with sun signs. And I think sometimes the
It's-
content, as our conversation up to this point has a good example of, I mean, we're talking about the nature of human
yeah.
beings and war and, collective pain and suffering and all, I think people would benefit from understanding that like a synonym of astrology may be just like the study of life or the study of the fullness of life, the full
Hmm.
panoply of all of the experiences for good and for bad of life. And so it's heavy, it's serious, it's transformative, it's very real, and it can be it's a tool that can help us live well, deeply, at a very deep level. It can help us create meaning in our lives.
Hmm.
It's one of the best tools for that. And there's other great tools too, but astrology certainly can go on the list of a powerful tool for meaning. Excuse me, and that's wonderful, right? And it's not simply, oh, let's have a fun. What's that stereotype? My son is an Aries. Okay, so I'm like angry. I can tell you I'm not angry. A lot of the times, the Aries can be a calming energy, and there's other nuances to everybody's, chart. But it goes well beyond that. I guess that's my main thing I would say, because I think most people think of it in a certain way that's more sun
Hmm.
sign based.
Wow, interesting. And also in building your astrological practice and opening your own YouTube channel, contributing with other astrologers, what has been the most challenging part of astrology becoming your business, basically?
Mhm. Well, it happened real naturally for me, and I don't so on the one hand, I would just say it kind of unfolded in a real kind of elegant, just like a flower or something. And I didn't need to
Mm.
force the blooming of that flower. It just all happened as it needed to and was supposed to. So I'm real happy about that. Trust me, I've tried in my life to force a lot of stuff, okay? And my astrology life did not have that or very much of that. So but if I had to say, well, what's been tough, some of it relates to maybe the nature of our world right now with social media, and it's the work-life balance. I mean, I don't think people understand how much having social media as a part of an astrological practice is a demanding thing. And, these videos don't make themselves. I mean, there's hours and hours of work that goes into the research, the writing, the recording, the editing. I mean, it's a lot of work to produce on social media, and the more you produce the more you're rewarded. So I mean, a lot of I think astrologers are overworked, and we've got a lot on our plates, and I think that people just be aware of that out there. I mean, I'm sure some people are aware of that, but it's
Thank
a
you.
tough job. I mean, it's
Mm.
nonstop, and you never a break, and you have to keep producing. There's always another new moon, there's always another transit, it's kind of a never-ending task.
Yeah, how do you deal with that? Because I mean, I really admire those astrologers who are following the transits and because I know what producing, recording, editing, uploading, downloading, blah, blah, blah. I know I'm really familiar. That's what I do for a living. So how do you keep up with like new moon, Saturn retrograde, blah, blah, blah? How do you ground yourself?
You know, part of it is that I am still passionate about it. I mean, it is something that
Oh,
it excites me, and
mm,
that's probably why I'm doing it because it's something that is like a passion or a calling. And I don't really get bored of it. I'm still just deeply fascinated by astrology, so it's that makes it a lot easier. If I can't imagine someone being an astrologer that didn't want to be one,
mhm.
and this was like their day job, like, oh shoot, another forecast. Oh, I hate this job. It's like it seems like most astrologers are doing it because there's a excitement that they were kind of brought
Yeah,
into it through an interest, a great interest. Um, but so, yeah, I don't really, it's just what I do. I mean, at a certain point, it's like you hear these actors or, like,
right.
why are you doing another movie? It's just what I do. I mean, that's what I
Oh,
am, an
that's
actor. So
cool.
like Al Pacino or something, he's like 85 taking another, that's what he is. So that's what I am, that's what I do. That's what I'm passionate about. And I just keep going with it.
Right.
Um,
And now, given the rising interest in astrology as a full-time profession, what do you wish more aspiring astrologers understood before taking that leap?
yeah, I mean, I would say, um, there's the money side. So how are you, there's different ways in this world of astrology that people generate income.
Mhm.
And I think it's good to just list those and then kind of be honest with yourself about what you're good at or what you have the desire or the kind of tolerance for. So, c- just quickly here, there's consulting. A lot of people do that. Not everybody likes that. Not everybody wants
Mm.
to be with people. You got to like
Yeah.
people if you're going to be a consulting astrologer. You got to want to
Right.
be with people and help them solve their problems and listen to them, So there is courses. That's a very big area that a lot of astrologers get into astrological education, you might say. And that's a thing you probably need some skills around. Can you create a curriculum? Can you communicate ideas? There is, I think, then the advertising side, which in this case, social media, right? Are you prepared to make social media content? If is that something you're able to do or willing to do?
Mm.
So I guess, it's like we're in a pure business conversation now. And
Yes.
if someone's trying to make the business of astrology, these are the things I would be asking them to grapple with. And it might not be that they want to make it into a business. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having just a passion for the craft and participating in astrology because of that passion and enjoying that side of it and not trying to force it into a business in any way.
Mm.
But yeah, just let me say that all differently. If you're going to consult, go study consulting skills in the
Right.
therapeutic world. There's therapists that write about all this. So go read that. Maybe you resonate with that. If you go learn about social media and not from astrologers, from social media people.
Mhm.
See if you like that. See if you're ready to do that. If you're going to teach, go look about online course people. Go listen to what they say. They're going to teach you about that. So, you know, getting tools from non-astrologers that are in adjacent or similar businesses can really help you, one, understand if you're ready for that, or two, give you skills to, if you know you're ready for that, to implement with your astrology business.
Yeah, maybe also at least try, right? Like I mean, if you're not sure, try consultations, try teaching, and try and see what resonates with you. Personally, and I'm really happy you brought it up. I wanted one thing, and then when I started doing that one thing, which is stitching, I'm like, well, maybe not. Like maybe that's not for me. But I still wanted to do something with astrology because, as you said, you're passionate about bringing information on your Instagram and YouTube every day. And I also like that part, but I'm like, I'm more of a behind the scenes person. So, but I had to try all these things in order to realize, oh, okay, maybe I'm gonna try this one now. And, I feel much more comfortable doing these interviews now than talking about an eclipse or something like that. So at least try, right? Like maybe that's a good kind of thing to do. And whatever you're gonna do it ethically and with responsibility, no? Because astrology, I mean, giving consultations, I really admire um all astrologers because it's about emotional, energies and being there for them. But coming back to you, SJ, just to
Mm-hmm.
end up the conversation, I wanted to ask you, what's the hardest lesson Saturn has ever taught you in life or practice?
Yeah. Well, I'll share this because I've been public about this before, but I had Saturn um, return, and that was in Libra in the year 2009 to 2010. And that's when I quit all drugs and alcohol. So it wasn't that it was like the hardest thing, but it was definitely a huge personal change to become a sober person. And Saturn, you know, during that Saturn return, bringing me into a kind of Saturn 9 way of life. Sobriety would be a key word for Saturn. Um, that's what something I'll throw there. I mean, I look back and it was, it was necessary. I was a crazy partier and I needed to stop doing drugs and alcohol. So I look back and it was like it makes total sense, and I'm glad it happened. Was it difficult in the sense like my most painful moment in my life's history? Probably not, but I just think it fits the symbolism. And that can be hard to let go of something you've become dependent on to kind of become a new person and let your body settle and the chemical, side of the sobriety process and all of that. So
Hmm.
that's an example I think I would throw there. I would say Saturn, I would just say another example is that the good sides, right? And I
Hmm.
had Saturn in my fourth house during a
Oh.
time when I got to spend a lot of time with my grandmother, who I really loved. We were
Hmm.
really kind of in love with each other in the best of ways, and during that fourth house Saturn transit, I got to spend months and months with her, and I got to hang out with her and talk to her, and just she was in her 90s at that time. And so we got to just, connect deeply, right? Going back to this idea, the gifts that Saturn gives can't be taken. And we actually have the same Saturn and the same Jupiter. So we were born
What?
with that
Wow.
same Saturn Jupiter cycle. So I always connected with, we always were very, very close. And she had like 17 grandkids, and she wasn't liked. Like I always was wondering, why do I love her so much and these people don't like her? And then I saw her chart and my chart, and we had a Saturn connection, a deep Saturn connection. So, that's a kind of upside or positive of what Saturn gave me, and both of those are kind of positive. But quitting drugs, trust me, it wasn't a winning streak that I quit around. I mean, I was not in a very good place at one level, but Saturn kind of brought me through that. And anyhow, those are things I've shared, in other contexts. And I bet I could go and like if I really went in and like, oh, when was like the most deepest moment of vulnerable struggle and things, but I'll have to save that for like my journal. So
No, don't worry, don't worry. I'm really glad you're sharing that with us. And finally, what's your take on Chiron in Taurus? Because Chiron takes its time. It's gonna stay there for a while, I think. Um, what could you tell us? What do you think it's the biggest lesson? Maybe it's too how you say early to tell, but what can you tell us about? What advice can you give us about?
Well, I will say I made a video about one component of it, and I already
Mm,
talked about that video had two main transits I focused on. One was the North Node in Aquarius and the McQuarter
mm,
cycle, but the other was Chiron and Taurus, which happens this year, but June, July. It's a short stint. It really peaks in a little bit, and I think it's some in August maybe, and then it goes back. But it's 1929. So, I mean, look, we got to be aware that there could be renegotiations with our material attachments. And I think we
mhm,
may have to dig deep around what is actual pleasure, what is actual essentials? How can we find pleasure in ways that are different than we think we would need to find pleasure? I say pleasure because that's Taurus in my view.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we may have to, if you're ever hard up, and there's no money, I mean, how do you get happy? How do you get comfort? How do you get safety? These Taurian keywords. And I think that's going to probably be a big part of the task. I come back to the AI idea and the opportunities with technology, but a lot of people are talking about transition. There's a lot of layoffs, and AI is taking jobs. And what if there is a little bit of a
Mm.
difficult transition here these next couple of years where there's leaner, the abundance is maybe less at one level, and we may have to rework our relationships with pleasure and how to achieve comfort, safety, and pleasure. And the thing is, what we'll learn will be amazing. Like there's whole YouTube channels. Like my grandmother during the Great Depression uses her recipe book, and they've got like millions of followers, and they're making. I just saw one. It was like they put in a jar meat and rice, and you don't even need to refrigerate it. I guess you put it in the jar, and then so there's all these skills that people can learn to
Oh,
thrive
wow.
with less, and maybe that's some of what will be that side of Chiron, the teacher, the healer, the magician.
Mhm. Interesting. Now to close, well, I'm just gonna try to close with a high note. What boundaries have you had to learn to hold as a professional astrologer? Maybe a close with a nice lesson.
Boundaries. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, people email you a lot and they want to connect with you and talk to you. And, I've had to learn what I'm available for and just how much I can be available. I've actually taken time off from like even coming on shows or podcasts at times just because I've been
Oh,
too overextended and I'm just like, okay, the next 6 months I'm just unavailable so I can, focus on my own channel or some of my own projects. So, I think that boundaries with my time have been some of the big lessons I've gotten. I say gotten to learn because it's helped me,
mhm.
I've learned how to say no and how to professionally
Mm.
decline things or how to, people email me and not um wanting I don't want to get off too much into this, but there's a lot of people in the world, and when you're publicly out there sharing and your email is public, I mean, people can contact you. And, if I sat and wrote and like gave everything back to what people share
Mhm.
with me, I just wouldn't have a lot of time, and
Yeah,
so I can't do that. I don't have that availability. So I've kind of learned how to just, yeah, I guess
take
I
your
like
time.
to meet people. I like to connect with people,
Mhm.
but I've learned that, I can only do what I can do, and to try to kind of navigate the nuances of that has been just part of my experience for sure. So.
Well, thank you so much for, for being here and for accepting the invitation because yeah, I mean, it can get really busy as you said. So I appreciate so much what you've shared here today with us, SJ. We talk about many things. I wanted to for those who don't know you, to introduce SJ here at Backstage Astrology, know more about what's behind being an astrologer and also, what you foresee for the next 6 months. So SJ, thank you so much. I hope to have you back when you get, some rest. But also, is there anything you want to close with, any advice or message or quote, whatever you want to share?
My quote would be, yeah, go to God and pray right now for the healing of the world. I think that we kind of need that, and I think there's a great opportunity to just have a kind of spiritual view and a calling on the loving, positive forces that do exist in this realm to help us get through this time of, crisis maybe and transition and turmoil that we've seen here so far this year. So I said this in my videos a lot, but I just think whatever kind of spiritual concept the audience might have, this would be a great time to try to rely on those forces and maybe grow closer to those forces. So,
Yeah, I'm really happy you mentioned that because God is the only thing that has kept me grounded these days. I'm not kidding. A few years ago, I was not too much into God, and this Saturn-Neptune is in my 12th house. So I said, okay, I gotta hold on to something, and it has really helped me. You have no idea. So thanks for bringing that up, SJ. You are still giving consultations, if I'm not mistaken, right?
yes, I
Yeah.
am.
Okay. So in the link below or in the pinned comment, you will find all the information about SJ. SJ, thank you so much.
Okay, you too, Myra. Peace to you. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care now.